Your title says Principal Engineer, but your code looks like it breaks out in hives near semicolons. That's what the new CTO, Weston Hart, told Iris Chen, a 54-year-old backend architect at TritonWave, during his second week. He said it standing by the whiteboard, which was littered with buzzwords like OKR streams, elastic output loops, and a pyramid titled Agile Maturity 360. Iris didn't argue. She blinked once, turned back to her terminal, and resumed a live fix on a stuck invoice job. In her world, uptime held steady at 99.997%. Revenue flowed because of her so-called inelegant code, hacked together during midnight outages, coffee-fueled weekends, and 3 a.m. customer escalations. But Weston didn't care. He showed up looking like an REI model, powered by Silicon Valley soundbites and a total lack of respect for history. Before him, Iris was the ghost in the machine. She skipped company pep talks, rarely spoken stand-ups, and used a gear icon as her Slack avatar. But her work was everywhere. Middleware she wrote had patched critical service failures no one dared to touch. Data routing logic, only she fully understood quietly, ran across 6 regions. She wasn't shiny, she was structural. Weston didn't see it. He launched a rewrite campaign, declaring the codebase a legacy swamp. His kickoff deck was a mess of velocity ladders and outcome-centric frameworks. Half the room clapped, the rest just stared. Iris didn't clap. She squashed a bug in billing while he was still talking. Then came the Trello sprints, rigid Jira workflows, and quiet terminations. Older engineers vanished, replaced by enthusiastic grads with beautiful portfolios and no production scars. They shipped quickly, but the system dragged. Latency bloomed like mildew. Weston couldn't see the cause, but Iris could. The code wasn't the problem. The understanding was. And Weston wasn't rewriting just the stack. He was erasing the people who kept it alive. And Iris, like it or not, had become legacy. Iris fixed it silently, one of her old bash scripts buried deep in a forgotten backup cron. She never told anyone, didn't want applause, just wanted the error logs to shut up. Then came the legacy logic review. Weston summoned her into a glass-walled room, pulled up her repo on a projector like it was Exhibit A in a trial. He circled random lines in bright red. This block has 0 documentation. This is recursion hell. You used C-style comments in 2024? Iris didn't flinch. That line's the only reason Stripe hasn't flagged us for duplicate webhook retries since Q3 of last year. Weston smirked. Still doesn't make it elegant. She didn't argue. She stood up and walked out. That was the moment she knew. It was just a matter of time. Quietly, she began backing up everything. Shell tools, dependency trees, even her old licensing docs. Not because she feared losing the job. She feared what would happen when she was no longer around to keep the system breathing. Weston kept pruning. Senior engineers were quietly off-boarded, their Slack statuses still green. The knowledge base grew dusty. Wiki edits slowed to a crawl. Meanwhile, Weston walked around with pastel dashboards and clicky KPIs like a doctor holding up clean x-rays of a patient flatlining. But Iris? She kept the lights on. Her demons cleared expired auth tokens. Her background workers kept billing queues from choking. Her scheduled tasks smoothed over the chaos like drywall over cracked studs. But no one asked about stability, just optics. Weston bragged to the board about refactoring 60% of legacy code. What he didn't say was that nearly every critical process still ran through a single-threaded core, the one tied to a humble open-source library. The same one Weston once praised on LinkedIn. Iris saw the post. She didn't laugh. She just stared at the screen, knowing exactly what he didn't. That library? The one holding their backend mesh together? She wrote it 5 years ago. And they were still running on it, without a license. Let's be honest, Weston said, waving his hand like he was conducting a startup symphony. Some of our senior engineers have been coasting. Legacy thinking kills velocity. We need shippers, not maintainers. Iris Chen sat in the back of the room, silent as names flashed across the screen. Marcus, the guy who'd built the original invoice sync, gone. Rena, the architect behind their deployment pipeline. Gone. No one said the word, but everyone felt it. Purge. A quiet campaign to erase history under the banner of optimization. Long-timers were either performance reviewed into growth paths or handed severance behind thin HR smiles. Then it was Iris's turn. Her calendar didn't say review. It read Q2 Scalability Realignment Session. She walked into conference room 2B at 9:01 a.m. Weston was already seated beside a freshly hired HR partner who looked like she'd walked straight out of a Canva ad. Weston clicked. Her screen lit up. Commit logs, JIRA summaries, some convoluted chart trying to measure code elegance per hour. Iris, your delivery cadence is steady, but steady isn't scalable, Weston said, folding his hands like a TED Talk villain. We need investor-facing infrastructure. What you've built is functional, not forward-looking. Iris stared at him. So, investor optics matter more than whether the scheduler runs at 3:02 a.m. without waking up the on-call team? It's about narrative, he replied. Our backend can't look like a salvage yard. She didn't flinch. That salvage yard handles $14 million a month without a single billing error. He smiled like a man who just read a leadership thread on Twitter. We're shifting to composable first engineering. She stayed quiet. Because in that moment, she realized Weston wasn't talking about architecture. He was talking about control. He clicked again, pointing to a slide showing a GitHub README. This library saved us thousands, he bragged. It was hers. He didn't even know it. She didn't vent, didn't rage post. Iris went home, powered down her phone, and opened her personal terminal. First stop, her GitHub repo. Her original open-source library, tucked behind an MIT-like license wrapper, with one crucial clause buried in the legal subdirectory. Commercial internal in for-profit environments requires explicit written consent and active license registration. Then came the deeper audit. She traced package pulls, internal forks, and containerized builds. TritonWave had used her code like a utility, lifted straight from public source with zero attribution, zero registration, and zero understanding. They hadn't even changed the default settings. Her watermark was still in the comments. She didn't panic. She documented. One by one, she downloaded everything. Deployment logs, commit trails, archived Docker images, decommissioned API keys, internal service maps. By midnight, her desktop held a neatly ordered folder labeled Compliance Evidence. No Slack farewell, no passive-aggressive tweet storm, just quiet, relentless receipts. She wasn't going to warn them. Weston had already started chopping, too arrogant to see he was hacking at the load-bearing beams. She'd let him. At 2:14 p.m. the next day, the email arrived. Subject: Engineering transition. Immediate. No greeting, no explanation. Just bulleted instructions and a calendar link titled Exit Processing. Slack, disconnected mid-thread, VPN, cut, GitHub, revoked. She couldn't even grab her own snippets from the cloud IDE. If you believe that quiet strength deserves a louder voice, hit subscribe, because the next story starts where the silence finally breaks. No call, no conversation, not Weston, not the product leads, not even the junior engineers she'd walked through their first production fires. They didn't call it a layoff. It was surgical, silent, Weston's brand of bloodletting. She stared at her laptop screen. 5 seconds, 10, 30. Nothing moved. Her chair still warm from that morning's stand-up, where she had calmly explained again why decoupling the new notification module from the legacy auth stack would throttle token refresh. They nodded, said, "Cool, cool," then went back to logging tickets about animated loaders. And now, she was gone. No thank you. No severance. Just an HR bot named Callie and a return deadline. 5 p.m. By the time Iris stepped outside, the company Slack was already celebrating. Weston's victory lap post was pinned at the top. Proud to announce the launch of our back-end modernization initiative, cutting code debt, boosting transparency, and driving scalable innovation. 4 fire emojis, 2 claps, And buried in the comments, someone wrote, "Sad to see Iris go. Her legacy will live in the logs." She didn't make it to the train station. Instead, she ducked into a corner deli, bought a cold Coke, and sat on a crate behind the building's dumpster, steam rising from pavement still wet from morning rain. She stared at the can. Not sad, not angry, just hollowed out. And then, something flickered. Not rage, not yet. Something cleaner, sharper, focus. She pulled out her phone and opened her public GitHub. Scrolled, checked the last download timestamp of her library. 34 minutes ago. Someone inside TritonWave had triggered a new build after her termination, using her library. Still unlicensed. Still covered by a very explicit clause she'd added years ago. Section 5C. For-profit entities utilizing this software internally must secure written approval and an active commercial license. No ambiguity, no room to interpret. They were in breach. And she had everything, every pipeline ping, every function call, metadata hash, audit trail, Jenkins trigger. Iris hadn't just written a library. She'd embedded a live fingerprint into every heartbeat of their infrastructure. They hadn't just fired her. They fired the backbone without realizing it. Weston didn't save the company money. He lit a match in a warehouse soaked with kerosene. Iris sipped the last of her Coke, dropped the can into the recycling, and unlocked her phone. Texted, "Talia, you still doing license enforcement?" Talia, "Only if it's juicy." Iris, "Multi-million-dollar usage. No contract." Talia, "My favorite flavor." She stood, stretching, the ache in her limbs replaced by something steadier. Fuel, quiet, controlled. At home, she opened her laptop, created a private repo, and dropped in a new zip folder, revoke-trigger.zip. And then she began to write, not code, not yet, an invoice, detailed, time-stamped, undeniable. Each charge in the draft invoice tied directly to TritonWave's active usage of Iris Chen's software. No rage, no theatrics, just cold, precise numbers. They wanted to cut costs. She was about to show them the real price. Talia leaned in, scanning the license text. Once, twice, a third time. They were seated in a tiny cafe downtown. Exposed brick walls, overpriced pour-overs, and two glowing laptops between them like evidence in a courtroom drama. Iris didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Talia's brow furrowed. Her voice dropped. Jesus, Iris. This isn't a gray area. This is industrial strength liability, with paper trails. Iris sipped her coffee. Black. I left the clause buried in the /legal folder for 5 years. No one ever looked. They should have, Talia muttered. Because the moment they ran it internally without a license, they basically parked a tanker on your property and started pumping oil for free. She flipped her screen around. GitHub metrics show 26 downloads in the last 90 days. Multiple logs confirm integration with internal domains. This function here, panic recover job, it's still tagging outbound reports with your hash signature. Iris nodded slowly. They called it legacy. I called it insurance. Talia chuckled, then began typing. Okay. 1 instance of unlicensed use. 88 runtime services. $7,500 per service. That's $660,000 right there. She added another line. Penalty for non-disclosure. $25,000. Cease and desist included. Draft invoice complete. She slid the screen toward Iris. We could send this tomorrow, or I'll walk it into Weston's office wearing a tux and a brass band. Iris didn't smile. She stared at the document, then gently closed the laptop lid. Not yet, she said. Talia blinked. Why? I don't want to hit them with the invoice yet. I want them to feel the absence. That night, Iris built a monitoring dashboard. Quiet, text-based. She scraped uptime feeds, developer forums, and Twitter posts. Set alerts for phrases like auth delay, webhook timeout, and invoice mismatch. Each time TritonWave's platform buckled, she'd see it, and she'd mark it. When a developer posted on a forum about flaky login sessions or late-night 502 errors, Iris screen captured it. When a user complained their billing data lagged 3 days behind, she timestamped it and added it to her folder. The first red flag hit 2 days after her exit. A startup founder tweeted, "Is TritonWave down again?" Third time out this week. New update broke more than it fixed? Iris smiled. Logged the link. The timestamp on the tweet matched almost exactly with their last, unauthorized pull of her OSS library. The next day, another post popped up. Anyone else getting duplicate invoices from TritonWave's webhook system? She didn't reply. Didn't warn anyone. She just observed. 1 week later, her GitHub showed a 500% traffic spike. A single IP was responsible for 18 pulls over 6 hours. She recognized it. It was their internal Jenkins server. They were panicking, grasping at pieces of code they no longer had a legal right to touch. Iris opened her invoice draft, quietly updated the total. $660,000 became $2.5 million. Talia called her the next morning. "You sure you still want to wait?" "Yes," Iris said. "Let them bleed first." This wasn't about the payout anymore. It was about consequence. The echo. The silence before the storm. She pictured Weston Hart standing in front of the boardroom, voice shaking, infrastructure crumbling behind him. It was coming. Not because she hoped, because she knew. It began with login delays, just a few seconds. Nothing urgent. Not yet. Then the sync service choked during peak traffic. Emails backed up. Invoices duplicated like rabbits on caffeine. Junior devs clustered in Slack, muttering about queue poisoning and timestamp mismatches. Translation: we have no idea what's breaking. Even the status page lied. Everything showed green. Proactive transparency, they called it. But support was drowning. One furious client emailed, "We've been triple billed. My accountant thinks we've been hacked." Inside TritonWave, engineers scrambled. Iris's old branches were reopened, but no one knew how the parts fit, because the one person who had was gone. The new scalable architecture was a Frankenstein patchwork of half-baked microservices and buzzword-wrapped API wrappers duct-taped together by interns with strong opinions and no scars. The intelligent scheduler Iris had built, one that smart-throttled cron loads across regions based on real-time queue lag, was gone. Weston called it over-engineered. In its place, a Zapier chain and 3 AWS Lambda functions that ate memory like a raccoon in a vending machine. By Friday, half the product's core systems were failing, at random. Weston, in classic form, blamed everything except Weston. AWS latency, bad YAML merges, a rogue intern. At one point, he even blamed solar flares. Solar flares. His Slack update read, Q3 platform inconsistencies linked to legacy cron fragmentation. Migration continues. We will iterate forward. Translation: I broke it. I have no idea how to fix it. Please, clap. Iris read that post while sitting on her apartment floor, leftover Thai noodles in one hand, her cat snoring on her hoodie. She didn't laugh. She simmered. Because behind every broken invoice, every support escalation, every desperate Slack ping was one unshakable fact. They were still using her library, still calling her endpoints, still balancing their infrastructure on tech they hadn't licensed. And now it was cracking. The tipping point came the following Tuesday. The tweet hit before her notifications even did. Client exports from TritonWave are scrambled. Names and IDs don't match. What's going on? Attached, a screenshot of corrupted CSV data, columns out of order, timestamps missing, user IDs duplicated. Iris zoomed in on the error code at the bottom. Job, worker, 17 and on, failure, panic, recovery, triggered. She didn't have to guess. That handler lived deep inside her library. It only activated when queue threads completely collapsed. They'd hit the wall, hard. Still using her code, still without permission, still clueless. She opened her dashboard. Traffic was surging again. GitHub activity spiked. They were reaching back into her repository, and they were doing it blind. They were scrambling, digging through logs, praying for answers buried in a repo they had never bothered to understand. Iris reopened her invoice draft and added a new line: background task misuse, resulting in client data corruption. Then beneath it, plus $400,000 breach escalation penalty. She didn't smile, didn't gloat. She just clicked save. Then she opened Twitter and bookmarked the thread. Not to respond, not to roast, just to mark it. This wasn't the end. It was only the first fracture, and she knew what came next. When brittle systems fail, they don't bend. They shatter. Weston Hart called it the clean slate push. He unveiled it at Monday's All Hands with the swagger of a man who'd skimmed a Harvard Business Review blog and thought it made him a battlefield general. "We're deploying version 3.0 tonight," he declared, arms folded beneath a projector slide titled Modernization Through Momentum. No rollback plan. Full replacement of all legacy code. This is how we show investors we're moving forward. Not one engineer met his gaze, because they all knew what he didn't. The rewrite wasn't ready. The billing engine was fragile. The new notification system ran on third-party middleware no one had audited. And underneath it all, core services were still clinging to Iris's library like a heartbeat monitor on a dying patient. But Weston didn't care. He wanted optics. He wanted headlines. So at 11:54 p.m., with no safety net, no dry run, and only a Slack thread full of nervous emojis, he hit deploy. The system screamed. Within 6 minutes, 38% of active sessions failed. By 10 minutes, background workers seized up. At 15, payment retries spiraled into infinite loops, charging some users multiple times. In a private client forum, someone posted, "We're being triple billed. What is happening?" Chaos erupted. SREs locked down dashboards. Pods were failing. Logs were dark. At 12:33 a.m., one of the last remaining senior engineers, someone Iris had trained, made a choice. No permission, no meeting. He SSH'd into the pipeline and quietly redeployed the last stable branch. The one running her code. No Slack notification, no JIRA ticket. Just a commit note. Hotfix/revert to functional, and Iris felt it. She was at home, headphones on, halfway through a Columbo rerun when the ping hit. Her GitHub webhook lit up, bursting with activity. Plus 247% request spike. Top referrer? Internal TritonWave CorpNet. Jenkins v 2.325 CI job triggered. Hotfix/revert to functional. She froze. They were pulling her code. Again. After firing her. After revoking her access. After publicly championing a modernization plan. Iris opened the CI logs. There it was. Version 1.4.2 of her library, pulled directly from her public repository. No proxy. No fork. Her watermark still intact in the compiled headers. She watched in silence as usage climbed. Over 1,000 function calls per hour. Authorized queue jobs. Invoice recalculations. Her code wasn't just holding up the backend. It was the backend. No license, no permission, no plausible deniability. She reached for her legal folder, opened the invoice draft, and clicked duplicate. Added a new line. Post-termination usage of proprietary OSS library. Amount, $1.1 million. Q2 estimate, tiered retroactive rates applied. Attached, time-stamped webhook logs, full IP trace, and continuous integration job references. Legally verifiable. Legally damning. She closed the laptop. No champagne, no victory speech, just reality. They could scramble, patch, blame interns, rewrite slides. It didn't matter, because they were still leaning on a foundation they'd tried to erase. And that foundation had a fuse wired straight to her hand. At 9:01 a.m., Wednesday, the invoice was sent. Scheduled in advance. Clean, direct. Subject: commercial license breach. Invoice and notice of pending disclosure. Body: Dear Legal Counsel, please find attached an itemized invoice for the unauthorized commercial use of the ChenLib open-source software across TritonWave's internal systems, including detailed logs of post-termination access. Evidence includes access logs, GitHub pull data, build artifacts, and runtime hours. Cease and desist draft included. 72-hour response window, silent, precise, and already in their inbox. The total amount due for Q1 licensing, $2,514,000 US. The closing line of the email read, "If no response is received within 72 hours, I will proceed with public disclosure of license violations, including publication to GitHub, LinkedIn, and relevant developer legal forums. Respectfully, Iris Chen." She detached the invoice as a clean, professional PDF. No bold fonts, no red highlights, just raw, verifiable math. 34 production services tagged, 2,711 runtime hours. Version references mapped to build IDs. Her watermark hash embedded in every compiled binary. The cease and desist letter was a separate attachment. Elegant, surgical, authored by Talia, and addressed not to Weston, but directly to TritonWave's general counsel. No threats, just citations. Each violation mapped, every clause quoted. She didn't CC Weston, didn't BCC the board, just sent it straight to the one person in the building who would understand exactly what that invoice meant. Then she waited. By 9:23 a.m., her GitHub webhook lit up again. They were still pulling her library. Again. She almost laughed. At 10:02 a.m., an email arrived. Subject: License breach notice. Sender: Weston Hart. Message: Let's talk. No apology, no denial. Just a shallow thread of desperation typed from some sweaty executive office where the air conditioner was probably failing, still managed by a backend service she'd written in 2021. Iris hovered over the message, then hit delete. Not archive, not flag. Delete. There would be no discussion. They would pay. Or they would burn. She opened her notes app, typed one word, Friday. That was the deadline. The silence would end then. Her attorney was prepped. GitHub README queued. LinkedIn post drafted. If the wire didn't hit by noon Friday, the entire industry would find out that the company parading around as an open innovation leader had built their empire on stolen code. And Weston, he was about to learn what real elegance looked like when it strikes back. "The code in question isn't proprietary," Weston said, trying to maintain control. "It's open source. She didn't build it for the company." Legal didn't flinch. "She didn't have to," the general counsel replied, voice sharp as a scalpel. "The open source license she used includes an internal use clause. Commercial deployments require explicit permission." She held up a printed document. "It's been enforceable since 2018, and our own logs show the company has been in breach for at least 14 months, including use after her termination." Weston's smirk cracked. General counsel tapped a folder. "We reviewed Jenkins logs, Docker images, and CI metadata. Everything points back to ChenLib, her repo. It's still powering production workloads as of this morning." A board member leaned forward. "Did you know her software required a commercial license?" Weston opened his mouth, closed it. The silence was a noose. "Did you?" the CFO repeated. "Or did you not know?" Weston shifted in his chair. "It was an oversight. Legal didn't flag it." HR chimed in, voice shaky. "She was let go without severance. No IP agreement was processed. Her access was cut before a compliance audit was completed." The room froze. Then legal added, almost casually, "Her attorney is extremely competent and extremely prepared. They're giving us until Friday. If there's no payment, they'll publish a detailed breach report across GitHub, LinkedIn, and legal developer channels." The CFO leaned back, eyes narrowed. "So we fired the woman holding our infrastructure together, rebuilt our future systems on her code without permission, and now she has the receipts?" Someone near the end of the table whispered, "We're screwed." Weston made one last attempt. "Maybe we can negotiate, offer equity, reduce the number?" "No," legal snapped. "She's not bluffing. She itemized runtime hours, and chatter's already started. If this leaks, we're radioactive." That afternoon, Iris's phone buzzed with a text from a friend at a rival firm. Screenshot attached. A new landing page, now powered by ChenLib trademark. Licensed, secure, scalable. Iris exhaled. No interviews, no blog posts, no tweets. Just truth, catching fire. She let the silence do the work. No public thread, no blog takedown, just quiet consequence. But someone else, someone sharp, had been watching the collapse from a distance. And they'd already reached out, weeks ago. Back when Iris quietly added an enterprise licensing contact line to her ChenLib README. No announcement, no banner, just a door, left ajar. For those who knew how to knock. Now, someone had. While Weston Hart flailed in his glass-walled office, losing his grip on the narrative, the numbers, and his illusion of control, Iris sat still. Unmoved, vindicated, calm. And it wasn't even Friday yet. They pushed Weston out on a Thursday. No internal memo, no thank you email, just a hollow press release about new ventures. One line buried in the footnotes of a board update. Effective immediately, Weston Hart will be stepping away from his role to pursue other opportunities. Translation? We handed him the rope, he did the rest. He left behind a data center stitched together with panic, broken morale, and a $2.5 million invoice hanging like a blade. HR offered him a golden parachute in exchange for silence. He took it. He always would. That's what people like Weston do. Swap consequences for quiet and call it strategy. But Iris wasn't Weston. When legal circled back, tiptoeing through phrases like mutual resolution and amicable outcome, they dangled a $750,000 hush offer buried in a confidentiality clause with a table of contents. She didn't even open the PDF. Her reply was one sentence. The full invoice will be honored or the cease and desist goes public. By Friday morning, the wire cleared. Iris sat on her balcony with a mug of black coffee, watching the city stir. No celebration, no drama, just closure. By noon, her GitHub inbox was overflowing, engineers inquiring about licensing, founders requesting calls, a recruiter from a major firm trying to play it casual. We admire your clarity around IP. Interested in a senior role? But it was a DM from a 3-time founder that made her pause. We're running ChenLib, fully licensed. Watch the way you handled this. Masterclass. We're building something ambitious. No VC strings, no office politics, just product. Want to build it with us? She didn't reply right away. Iris let the message sit while she stepped outside for a walk. No destination, just motion. For the first time in years, she wasn't holding a crumbling codebase together with caffeine and sheer will. She wasn't carrying dead weight while being talked over by people who didn't understand what they owed her. She was choosing, on her terms. The next morning, she walked into a co-working space on the east side. High ceilings, sunlight, air that didn't smell like recycled fear. Above a modest desk, someone had scribbled in dry erase marker. Welcome, Iris. No corner office, no layers of middle management, just a crisp contract printed on thick paper, a fountain pen, and one title at the bottom, CTO. She picked up the pen and signed. As the ink dried, her phone buzzed with one final notification. A system message from TritonWave, the company that had fired her, erased her access, and built their fragile empire on stolen foundation. TritonWave will be undergoing scheduled maintenance this weekend to improve service stability. Translation: the patch failed. The fix didn't stick. The damage lingered. The ghosts were still in the pipes. Iris didn't smirk. She didn't gloat. She smiled. Not with spite, but with clarity. Because now, the library was truly hers again. Her name was on the license. Her clauses defined the terms. Her fingerprint pulsed in every system that dared to reuse what they'd once called disposable. Ahead of her stretched clean code, a new repository, a sharper future. And this time, no one would steal her work without paying the price. I didn't build for applause. I built to last. If you've ever been overlooked or replaced, drop a comment. Share your story. Tell me where it hit home. My advice? Document everything. Protect your work. And when they underestimate you, let your silence speak louder than their noise. Walk away with proof, not pain. You don't need revenge. You need clarity, ownership, and peace. If you believe in quiet power and justice done right, hit subscribe. This isn't just my story, it's ours. And I know you've got one too. Let's talk about it below.